Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Patterson, and I am PMA's Executive Director. Thank you for joining us today for Ching, Proven Tips and Tricks to Improve NOI. If you haven't already, please mute your microphone at this time. And before I introduce our panelists today, I'd like to just take a moment to recognize PMA's corporate sponsors. Our platinum sponsors include Tepfer Construction Company and InterSolutions. 3 cheers for them. And our 5-star sponsors include American Pest, Capital Canopies, Electronic Security Services, Finley Asphalt and Concrete, Hawkins Electric Services, Minkoff Company, Owl Pest, Multi-Housing Depot, Residency Bureau, and TRC Engineering. Thank you guys all so much for your support of PMA. It's companies like those supporting us that allow us to provide these events for you guys at no cost. So like I said, we have a great discussion planned for you this afternoon. Our panel includes Boris Halstead, who's the Physical Asset Service Manager with Southern Management Companies, Tomeka Owens, who's the Vice President of Operations with TM Associates Management, Inc., and Mike Barrett, who's the Group President, Investment Properties at Van Meter. And to moderate the discussion, it's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Casey. Jennifer is the Senior Vice President, Asset Management at the Donaldson Group.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everybody. As I said earlier, if you are just getting on, I'm really glad to see you all. I miss all the events where we get to see each other at, even if I'm not at a ton of them, I miss them. So Sarah has the benefit of having this all on her screen, so she looks like she's not reading, but I don't. So I have a piece of paper. This year, I had the pleasure of serving as PMA's Operation Council Co-Chair with Danny Bressler of Tepfer Construction. The mission of the Operations Council is to develop programs that help PMA members improve the operations of their properties that they manage and to provide forums for property management operations specialists to network. In today's economic climate, it goes without saying that property management companies are looking for opportunities to save money without sacrificing the health, the safety, and the service at their sites. That's why the Operations Council is so excited for today's program. As Sarah mentioned, we have a fantastic panel lined up, and we brainstormed some of these topics in advance, but we really want this to be less of a webinar and more interactive. So we're asking that you all feel free to chime in throughout the conversation. If you have questions or ideas to contribute, please share them in the chat. And Sarah and Danny will be helping me moderate the chat as we go along before we go over from one section to another. So feel free to chime that in, and I'll remind you if you forget. Also, if there are associate members or vendors that are on today's event, you're more than welcome to contribute to the conversation, but remember it's intended as a forum to facilitate sales. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to start today with the topic of utilities. So one of the things that we had talked about was, really when we brainstormed this was how do we find savings in as many places that we can, and what are other people doing? We had, as a group, a few ideas, but certainly want to hear what yours are too. One of the biggest is utilities. Now with everybody home, what are we doing and how are we finding savings there? So in properties where you're paying for utilities, since more people are spending time at home, are there any utility saving measures that you're seeing or that you're considering that we may not have necessarily focused on previously, where half of your property may have been in the workforce and out of their apartments? Tomeka, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing?
Sure. Well, just across the board, we're really taking this time to really look at our accounts to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck, to make sure that we're actually paying for the services that we're receiving the services that we're paying for. And now's a great time to really get down and scrub those. Sometimes when you walk into a property, maybe there's 8 phone lines that are going in to the property because that's the way it's set up, and that's what you end up paying for year over year over year. But now's a good time to really do a deep dive into those invoices and just kind of take a look and see, do we really need 8 lines? Is the setup exactly the same as it was whenever we took this project over? Also, to look at some of the meters, make sure that you can go in and tie some of the meter numbers to the actual meters that are on your site. Maybe certain meters have been changed out, maybe they're no longer in use. but you're still you're still seeing like a recurring monthly charge for those. So for us, it's been great. We have seen some savings there, just really digging down deep and scrubbing some of the invoices that we receive on a monthly basis.
I can definitely relate to that. I know that we've seen, especially in phone lines, it's such a pain to look through them all and route them all. But when you realize that for 5 years you've been paying for 3 phone lines you didn't need, it's, you kind of feel like you maybe should have done it a little before, but pandemics bring out the investigative side of all of us. Mike, what are you seeing?
So yeah, a lot of what Tomeka is looking at, I think for us, we've always done water meter readings and had people crawling down in, holes, taking that, but it's especially important now considering how many people are at home and the water usage going up, that you don't have leaks, that you catch these things quicker. So it's really making sure that we're staying on top of the meter readings. The other thing is for properties that have rubs, it's another time to take a look at that because the usage is higher. Now that's a balance considering how sensitive people are to pricing these days.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something that we're taking a look at is, a rub in a normal world, what can we do potentially to maybe increase that? And then again, in 6 months, does it go back to a more normal? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a slow, climb back to where we were before. And the last thing we're doing is looking at our bulk gas contracts. So, some of these are locked in for a number of years, but looking and seeing if there's better deals out there and really taking into consideration some of the lower gases, prices that we have seen recently, and how maybe we can change our contracts to take advantage of that.
Thank you. That definitely makes sense. Boris, are you doing anything different? Are you seeing anything different there?
Yes, I always tell people take this opportunity to really look at the temperature setting on your water heaters. For those who have central plants or have individual or commercial ones, make sure they're not set higher than they need to be, because that's going to be a big savings on the gas consumption, because more people are home taking longer showers more frequently. So that's a way you can recoup some of that savings, because you can't limit the water, but you can set the temperature to a lower setting.
That makes sense. Absolutely. We've also started taking a look at the rates that we can hit on the different tiers and saying, do some of the utility programs that maybe we were so far away from another tier that might have given us a better rate, are with so many people being home now and really teleworking being something that we don't foresee going away in the future. Are some of those utility savings programs something that would make sense now where they may not have before, to take us to a different rate and save us additionally on the, the expenses on the property? Did anyone have anything else, Sarah or Danny, that we didn't cover that we might want to discuss?
Yeah, we had a comment from Adam Landsman, who just shared that for properties with central HVAC plants, 40 to 50% of gas and electric costs go toward heating and cooling. So there's, of course, energy management companies out there that can help you address this and make a sizable impact on consumption and maintenance. And shameless plug, PMA has those energy management companies. We have water management companies as well. You can take a look at our online directory to find those companies to help you out.
Excellent.
And also, I'd like to add something, Jennifer. Also, if you have water meters, the accounts you have, as Tomeka mentioned, but actually physically look at them to make sure they're actually reading something. Because a lot of times you get billed for that meter, but it's actually not reading anything. It's just a fictitious bill. So you want to track that over time to make sure that the amount makes sense monthly. Because right now you should have seen an increase, but if it's the same number all the time, then that meter is defective. And depending on your municipality, it's an issue you have to take up with the city in a lot of cases.
That's a great point. Is anyone in the group, Boris, I think we had talked about it, is anyone using any of the government tax or local jurisdictional programs and finding any savings in those? Any like HVAC or lighting or any programs that you can take advantage of that'll give us any credits or?
So with that, a lot of people are hesitant to go to LED, but think of it now, in the wintertime, you're running 14-hour day hours where the light will be on, community lighting, hallway lighting, because it gets dark at 5. It doesn't get light again until around 7 a.m. in the morning. So you run a very long period of time with that electricity running all the time. So if you can get rebates to go to LED, that'll be a good time to really look at that. Walk your community when someone has an emergency, go outside, kind of walk, see what lights are not working. That way you waste less time in the day trying to figure out what lights are out, and you can address those issues earlier.
Got it.
Are you finding that people are hesitant to switch to LEDs just because of the upfront cost?
Yes,
Yeah.
but the residual payback is ridiculous. And so you save a lot of money. Those lights will last you, it depends, 15 to 23 years, depending on the bulb and the quality of the LED light that you get. So that's a big savings. Instead of chasing lights being out all the time, it gives you a longer duration and you can schedule for those replacements.
Great. Yeah, we're doing this. We've done a lot of those ourselves. And the other thing you can look at is with the darkness happening quicker, making sure that you don't have lights on longer than you need to. Actually, you're probably in the other direction, but just managing and looking at lights on it during the daytime and those types of things that might also cause more energy costs.
Great time to identify those photo cells that are not working properly. And, you know, just really, and sometimes you just have to do an analysis, and now's a really great time to do it. Some offices are closed and, you know, things are not as open as it used to be. So now's a great time to possibly do that LED analysis and see that something that you're able to present to or maybe your ownership group and say, hey, you know, this is our upfront cost, but this is the savings we're looking at year over year.
Absolutely. Before we move over to the next section, is there anything else that came through that we wanted to talk about, or did anybody else have any feedback on utilities that we can hit?
This is Mitch. One thing I wanted to advise you, or I don't know if you guys heard of this or not, but there is tax credits, 179, and a lot of accountants don't know about it. But the tax credits for any kind of upgrades, any kind of capital improvements could be quite substantial. I don't know if anybody's dealt with that before. The 179, section 179 in the tax code.
No, but I definitely think it's something good for us to take a look back and, you know, research a little further. Thank you, Mitch. We appreciate it.
Sure.
And we had some sort of seconds to all of this talk, you know, a comment from one of our participants saying that Washington Gas, Pepco, BG&E have a ton of money to put toward energy efficiency. Another participant recommending a vendor that they've used for efficiency when it comes to lighting and finding government rebates. So we have members who can help with that too.
Excellent. For third-party services, one of the things that we'd also discussed was, you know, is it time to renegotiate the services that we provide, that you provide or support to make to make your return on those services higher? Maybe is it time to renegotiate contracts for a higher rebate or a higher return? Boris, I think you had said you had some experience in that.
Yeah, a lot of it have contract cleaners. So right now they have to step up and sometimes clean twice as often just because of the COVID outbreak. So now you're seeing them go into hallways and touch points 2 or 3 times a day. So maybe looking at that contract and seeing where we have some flexibility with it if you do. And everyone is trying to stay employed. So sometimes right now they're really flexible with those numbers because they know the environment that everyone is in right now.
Got it. On a similar note, you know, as times are changing, you know, are you seeing that you're ordering more? Are you ordering less on supplies, of your own supplies now in any maintenance area, maybe cleaning supplies, pools, paint, etc.? And, you know, in addition to that, are you finding any savings in ordering these yourself now opposed to, you know, paying your vendors to order those supplies and having it built in the contracts? Tomeka, anything?
Yeah, I know we're definitely seeing some savings with ordering the supplies ourselves. And we all know, especially at the beginning of this pandemic, it was really difficult getting any type of disinfectant and cleaning supplies, even PPE. And so we've kind of gone outside the normal vendor lines and reached out to, you know, secondary, tertiary agencies to see if we were able to get those supplies at a reduced cost. Certain times we've been able to, just because you really can't buy as much in bulk as you used to. So we've definitely, we've gone away from going from those major suppliers, the ones that we all know, the ones that deliver next day and go directly and put it on the shelves that they've created in our maintenance shops, to sometimes go into those outside vendors, some of those smaller hardware stores and things like that in some of the small town regions. So everyone has seen an uptick in pricing, especially with the disinfectants. And I think it's definitely worth the conversation as a part of your scrub at the end of this year. Talk to your vendors and see what pricing they're able to get, but also do your own due diligence and your own research and see if you're able to save a little where you can.
Absolutely. How about you, Boris?
Definitely. We were lucky to have a great vendor that we partner with that actually make a lot of the chemicals that we needed to use. So we really wasn't impacted from that end. And also because they work with a lot of hospitals, we're able to really get a good stock of PPE through that vendor. So we were very fortunate and we ordered ahead of the big outbreak. So we were really in a good position to really have all the PPE you need for our techs and the people on the front line.
Awesome. Has anyone had any luck in consolidating products purchased and resulting in savings or a lower negotiated rate? Maybe, order supplies in bulk or spreading it amongst businesses. Boris, I think you mentioned something about that as well.
And so I don't know how many of you have access to a warehouse or a place where you can store bulk, but you get a way better pricing when you can buy. If, say I'm a manufacturer and I'm making 100,000 of this, I'd rather sell you 100,000 because I know I'm clean. I'm going to make all the money I need versus giving you little. So the more you can buy in bulk, the better it will be. It makes your purchase power that much better. And talk to your sister, brother, company or whatever, see what they're doing, and maybe you can jump on their bandwagon and kind of come together and build that purchase power. So
that's a great idea. Before we leave purchasing, did anybody have anything? Did anything come in? Nope. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about budgeting. This year has definitely, I know most of us are in the midst of writing our 2021 budgets, which is really just the best guess and the magic 8 ball as to what it's going to look like next year. And I think it's a good time to talk about, with the pandemic, in some areas we're spending more while other areas we're really seeing some savings. It's definitely shifted our business. So, what impact are those factors having in your 2021 budgets? Mike?
Yeah, so for us, obviously with the pandemic, we cut back on a lot of things that weren't necessary, especially in the beginning, because we didn't know exactly what this was going to mean for us. So additional landscaping that we, normally would do, obviously resident events, swimming pools, all those types of things. So adding all of those back in, and then a lot of CapEx projects that we didn't feel were required, we've pushed them back. So our owners understand that we're going to have a much heavier lift in CapEx and in 2021, because I do think the worst is going to be behind us, and 21 will be better than 20. So for us, it's sort of taking more of a look at 2019 and how we operate, and kind of comparing our 21 budget to 19 now, because obviously 20s you can throw out the window.
Absolutely. Tomeka?
I agree. That's similar to what we've done. We really have just done a deep dive on 2019. Started off a lot of the ownership budget discussions with, hey, 2020, let's not go there. So we're really looking at 2019 as a historical, looking at some of the outliers in 2020, some things that we may want to continue to do in 2021. Some of the cleaning structures that we've done and implemented on some properties, it's been great, and we've got great resident feedback. So maybe that's going to be a little higher in 2021. So we've really, again, used 2019 kind of as our true historical, and then adding in some of those extra points that we'd like to consider going forward for 2021. But yeah, using the 2020 budgets, you definitely have to pick it out and look at it just as an anomaly.
I will add one thing that, there were some positives that came out of 20 in ways that we do things that maybe we never thought of doing, or maybe it's sped it along a little bit. So you can take some of those efficiencies that we've been able to find, throughout 20 and apply that to 21 as well. So, we're going to get into virtual tours and how resident services, those types of things. There's ways we found to be more efficient.
Absolutely. I think 2020 taught us all that red tape is not necessarily, it's a thing of our minds, not necessarily a thing of realities in all senses. Boris, are you seeing anything different there?
Oh, definitely. And what Mike said, because of the virtual world we're now living in, you think about the cost savings as far as when we used to have this person-to-person meeting, we always wanted to feed everyone. And look at the cost savings there. Some individual food budgets are ridiculous. So that was a big savings. Is think about how the less travel, the kickback for that, the mileage that someone would incur doing those type of things, and the flights and so forth. So there's a lot of savings company did have, but also look, we saw an increase in appliances, some as much as 17%, which I just thought was kind of crazy having the year that we had that they decided to do that this year. So that's going to really impact your budget going forward and could impact it this year because there was an interruption in delivery from whatever contract you were using to get your appliance. So you had to look outside that norm and buy this brand, that brand, whatever you could find to put in that space if you needed it. So that could have really caused a big impact because now you're paying more for something that you would get for, $100 less normally.
The other thing is that you talk about appliances, the usage that's going on in these apartments. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I did a lot of dry cleaning and I'm in jeans and a golf shirt a lot of times now. So a lot more laundry being done, a lot more dishes being washed, a lot microwaves and ovens being used where people used to be out a lot more and might have eaten lunch out. Now you're eating 3 squares a day probably in the house. So it's a little bit different. It's going to be more wear and tear on the appliances in the units.
Absolutely. Now, if we can just get appliances back on the shelves as fast as we got sanitizer and toilet paper back, I'd be a happy camper because I can't get a refrigerator to save my life. So, speaking of that, and we were talking, really, it was one of the questions we talked about. We were looking at the proposal of the items for for this call was, have we begun to use different products that are cheaper to save? And, has brand loyalty really become, in challenge financial times, has it become less important? Are we less focused on getting this name brand item? And I had brought it up originally with appliances, and then we all kind of laughed and went, well, we kind of go with what's available, what makes sense. It's, it's apartments. But is anybody seeing where they're using something different, or maybe they've compromised from what they thought they originally needed to go outside of the box to something a little less name brand? We're just going with what we can get. Okay, me too. Anything on purchasing before we move to budgeting? Or budget? Oh, I'm on budgeting. Before I move to preventative maintenance?
Nobody wants to talk about budgets. I think they're all happy that they're almost done with them.
Yeah, I feel you. Preventative maintenance. We all know that an effective preventative maintenance program is a huge cost savings measure, but for many it was challenging at the start of this year in the pandemic to perform that preventative maintenance. So how have you begun implementing preventative maintenance practices at your property now that things are getting back to our pandemic normal? Tomeka?
We're almost back to normal. We're definitely going into, resident homes again and doing all the service requests, not just emergency maintenance. We're back on our preventative maintenance schedules. It has, of course, been a little more expensive this year just because we are requiring so much PPE for our maintenance team. And we want to make sure that they have the supplies necessary to get in and get the job done just in one fell swoop. It's a lot more communication too with our residents. We are asking that when we go in for preventative maintenance that, the resident goes to another room. Or, if they're not home, then that's great too. But we're trying to maintain that social distance, even though, we're kind of back to normal when it comes to getting back into our apartment homes and making sure that they're being taken care of.
Absolutely. Boris?
And we're doing the same thing. We're a full go. So we're requiring that, the team members wear a half-face respirator or a minimum KN95 to enter. And then we have questions that we'll ask if the person is home before we enter. And through doing that, we'll find out a lot of residents do have a positive or have had or going through symptoms that they will never mention otherwise. So it's a good thing. And I tell them treat everyone like they do have COVID. And that's going to be your best weapon. So you always wear the right PPE every time you enter a home.
Nice, Mike.
Everything, yeah, I agree with everything that everybody just said. The one thing we're doing is with this recent uptick, we've gone back to what's called A and B days. So on a larger property, half of the staff, the A team, will do just turnovers, and then the B team will do just tickets for the week. And that what the idea there is to minimize exposure and trying to keep the number of people interacting with each other down to a minimum. And then we flip it the next week. So, but everything they're saying, obviously safety is the biggest concern there, making sure that the residents go to another room like we talked about. We're back to the normal way, all tickets being handled, common area as well. So, but agree with everything Boris and Tomeka said.
No questions came in on preventative maintenance.
Got it.
Add one more thing, Jennifer. If your team or your staff still feels some type of apprehension about it, so what you could do is just really focus on the necessary things that you have to do. Maybe it's a quick going in, just changing the filter, checking the smoke detector, not necessarily clean your coil, depending on what your preventive maintenance is, to try to minimize the time in the unit, so limit exposure that way.
Absolutely. Let's have that uncomfortable conversation about staffing. Someone mentioned, and I don't remember who, that, times have changed and we really have gone to this virtual tour, universe right now. So, with online leasing and self-guided tours, website bots, call center options are really becoming the norm. Are any of your companies, thinking on cutting back on any of the live employees or centralizing those team members in favor of any electronic supports? Tomeka?
Great thing, with TM, we haven't cut back any of our staffing. We're still customer service driven. We definitely used, other means. We have pushed a lot of online, more online leasing and for online payments, and again, just increased our communication with our current residents and with our prospects. We have tried to do more virtual tours as well, but it still takes that person in the background. So I think it's great that we're in a great industry. There's a lot of industries that may not come out of COVID, but I think the apartment industry is very resilient. I think our residents are always here and we always want to be there with them. So we have not experienced any cut in staff. We also haven't increased staff, but we haven't cut any. So I think that's really great going into 2021.
And for us, we're actually hiring individuals. So if you know anyone that needs a job in maintenance, let me know. But the residents, they prefer the face, person to person still. And for some, it's actually relief. You've been stuck in the house with the same person. Sometimes you just want to talk to someone different. They won't admit it, but it's just something different than just watching Netflix and talking to your significant other every day. It's a good break sometimes, just to see another face.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, with us, we haven't let any staff go either. We did have a couple of leasing floaters that left earlier in the year. We just chose not to refill the position because normally if there was a need somewhere, we would have them go in. But again, lead management's the most important thing, and we're fighting for every lease like everybody else is. And so everybody wants that personal touch, and you want to make sure that when a lead does come in, we expect that within an hour, obviously that lead is followed up and then followed up consistently. And so thankfully, like the others, we haven't had to let staff go. And that's kept morale up too. That was That was the big concern we thought about in the beginning. Is unless things really got bad, we didn't want to do that because then everybody else starts to wonder, am I next? And we've been able to avoid that.
And Jennifer,
No,
I
I
can
think that-
also say that this has
Go
been a
ahead.
great time. We've really taken a strong look at our staff, at our team. Who are those team players that are going above and beyond? Who are those that are really standing out, and who's on that path of promotion? And we've done quite a few internal promotions, even over the pandemic. So I think it's the cream really rises to the top, especially whenever we're kind of pressed to our limits. So I think that's been a great thing that's come out of the pandemic.
I think adding to that, you really know who your superstars are through something like this.
Mhm.
Our founder of our company was a big sailor, and he goes, he liked the storms sometimes because it tended, everybody can sail great when the weather's fine. It's when you have a big storm is when you find out who your people are. And to Tomeka's point, we've been able to hire internally, and people have really stepped up and showed, they really want it. So it's helped in some ways.
It's wonderful, and it builds the morale of your company. You're absolutely right. I asked the question not because we should be scaling back, but maybe because it makes us rethink. And I think you all have done just that. We as an organization have done something very similar. And I agree that, you're right. Your stars really do shine when there's times that are troubling. I think what we've also realized is what people's talents are. Some people are just not great at online leasing, and some people are really extraordinary at it. So we've had some people who really have done an amazing job at it in a way that we couldn't have anticipated. But because now that's where we are, those people now are leading groups and training groups of people within our organization to be able to do that more effectively. And then we're looking at in the future, if we do have turnover on sites, do we replace those leasing agents with new leasing agents, or do we have maybe a central person that works remotely that will respond to online leaves that we allocate out because they're really, really great at it? So I think it's made us just rethink, what do we need, not necessarily the quantity, but is there someone who's really doing an extraordinary job, who's really great at this, that we can push in that direction to really lead the group or lead that, that leasing team in a very different way. I don't think online leasing is going away, but I do think, face-to-face will be coming back. So we need a little bit of both.
I think this is the time too, we can also celebrate our team members, because for what they're doing with the situation we're in, I can't thank them enough. So I just think we really, really need to celebrate and give kudos and really show that appreciation for them showing up every day, because their family is telling them, I don't want you to go, but I got to pay the bills. And so it's a hard decision a lot of times, but they show up and they're dedicated and they work hard.
Absolutely. For resident services, let's talk through, I kind of skipped and we'll go to other saving opportunities, but for resident services, another way to save money really is closing the back door, is to save funds on reducing resident turnover. So, what are your tips and tricks in terms of service to keep your residents happy, in light of the pandemic, which of course then, becomes closing that back door and saving us on those turn expenses and finding, and marketing and advertising for new leases. Mike, what are you all doing?
So for us, obviously your big parties in the lobbies are not happening and those types of things. So everybody's been kind of creative. For smaller properties, they've done things like bingo, they've done virtual painting, they've done, obviously the bagels and the pizzas, delivering those types of things to people. But it's really thinking about, what can we get away with? Not get away with. What's the best, most safest way to get everybody engaged, interactive? And a lot of those virtual type events have been best for us.
Very nice. Tomeka, how about you?
We've done some of the virtual events. We don't really have that great of a turnout. I think so many of our properties are in little rural areas, and maybe, the internet is not as stable or people are not as computer savvy. But I know that one thing that's worked great, especially at some of our senior communities, is the seniors, they're not really sure. They're not really sure what they can do, what they can't do. They're not able to see their families and friends the way they used to be able to. And some of them are really, really getting up in age, or maybe have, other conditions that are, that just makes them really scared during this pandemic. So one thing that we've implemented at some of our senior properties are just color cards, where it's green and it's red. So before the team leaves, the on-site team leaves, they go and they turn everyone's card on the frontward facing doors, they turn them all red. And then we ask that when the seniors get up in the morning, they just reach out their door and they turn their card green. And for those properties that are they're like a box. So for those properties with those, you kind of stand in the main corridor and look around, and you can see which doors have been turned green. And it just gives them a little bit of reassurance that, hey, someone's checking on you. And then, maybe if it's noontime and that card's still red, that person may get a knock on the door. We just want to hear something going on inside to let them know that, hey, we're checking on you and we care. And it's really helped them with their mental state. It's also helped their family knowing that, there's another person just kind of keeping a watch.
That's so wonderful. I had never thought of it, and that is an amazing idea. Thank you. Boris?
So one of the things that we thought of, which was one of the best ideas of the year, I think, we had a virtual job hiring event. So we met with some of our partners that are hiring, different companies that are hiring for jobs, and we set it up with our residents where they can come on and interview with said company. So it was kind of like we're doing here, and there's different backgrounds and different companies on the line, and they gave you the information you need, what they were looking for, and try to get our residents employed again, because a lot of people did lose their jobs. So I think that was a great thing to do to really help them see outside of what was going on and really get them employed and get some money flowing inside the household. So I really enjoyed that.
That's brilliant. It kills two birds with one stone. Great idea. We've done a lot of the resident virtual events, and I think it's hit or miss based on the property on what we're seeing success with. We're trying to do, drop bags of fun stuff to our residents, and the little door hanger bags, and we're thinking about you, and of course quirky little sayings and things. Sending them sanitizer. We sent all of our residents a roll of toilet paper when this whole thing first started. That's where all the toilet paper went, obviously. But really just trying to think through, how do we interact with them in a way that lets them know that we're thinking about them in a meaningful way, and really tried to set a lot of our meetings through Zoom now. So we've messaged our residents and said, here, jump on a video call and let's talk about your account, or let's talk about your concerns, so that they're not forgetting that we're still a face, and we're not forgetting that they're still a face too. So I think that that's really just, utterly essential.
Online fitness is another thing, I'm sorry, that we've been doing too. Online fitness has been another kind of a hit at some of the younger crowd, where they can go on and take classes with people that we've partnered up with. So it's been kind of neat.
That's awesome. Other saving opportunities, I think all too often we think of just the dollars and cents that we save today, but what about those times where there's an instance where there's an insurance problem, or there's an accident that happens? So do you require renter's insurance at your properties, and if so, are you really using it to the fullest potential to save on items that you can place claims against, instead of paying it out of pocket or getting a reimbursement for what you've already paid out of pocket? Mike, how about you?
Yeah, we're 100% renter's insurance, so that's required to move in. We haven't seen a lot of claims, surprisingly, with everybody being there, thankfully, and knock on something. But yeah, if we're able to help work with the residents or put it through that claim, absolutely.
Got it. We have our renter's insurance policy. We have a master policy that the residents can opt into or opt out of, and what have you, depending on the area that we're in. But one thing we did a couple of years ago, which I'm thankful for, we've really utilized this year, is added on, mold, added on bed bugs, and we're placing claims against those policies for all of those things that maybe otherwise we should have, in a perfect world, been placing claims against if the policies are in place. But you know, we've seen, you know, $15,000 worth of checks just in the last few months on, you know, bed bugs and mold and water damage claims for resident, you know, for resident items. It takes a little time, but, you know, if you can get it back, we've already spent it. If we can get reimbursed, then why not? One thing we also did was went back to our master policy company and asked, you know, if there were anything else that they could add to it. You know, are there any freebies that you can throw in for, you know, our loyalty to you as well? And they did. They added a couple of other things that, you know, would save us if there were, you know, if there were an incident that might cover residents' hotel stay or something like that, where, you know, we're not obligated to it, but an owner might want to. And now we've provided coverage that won't burden us while we're trying to service our residents. So it kills those two birds with one stone.
I think the other thing, sorry, Jennifer, to add is that things that we've seen recently, and I know everybody on this call has a lot of delinquency, especially depending upon where your assets are located, but we've seen a huge uptick in collections over the last 60 days. If you compare it against this time last year, those same 60 days, it's about a 70% increase. And part of that is obviously people trying to buy homes and needing to clean up their accounts. So I would recommend for those, I don't know about everybody else, but we do it for, 60 days unless we think there's absolutely no chance, and then it goes off to collections, that you're working with your collection companies and making sure they're following up, because there might be an opportunity to recoup some of those losses from the past.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jennifer.
No, go ahead, Tomeka.
There are a lot of agencies as well. I know I get sometimes daily, if not, definitely weekly updates from some of the local municipalities, some of the state agencies, because they have funds. The federal government has supplied a lot of jurisdictions, counties and states with just an influx of cash for eviction prevention, especially in the district. And I know there's also a lot of money right now in Maryland as well. And some of them, the landlord can apply really on the resident's behalf, and some of the residents have to go directly for this assistance, and they may have to prove that their delinquency is directly related to COVID or job loss or loss of hours. But just over since the beginning of the week, I think DC has awarded $1 million in money for eviction prevention. They know that the courts are not open in a lot of areas right now, so they're trying to keep the number of evictions that come out of this. Once the moratorium is lifted, they are trying to keep it at a minimum. So do your research, and like Jennifer said, it takes a little bit of extra work, but it's definitely worth it if you're able to get 80% of someone's delinquent rent paid.
Yeah, we've seen that and applied for it, and they don't make it easy by any means. It's a very lengthy process, but we have seen it even, most recently Montgomery County offered for properties. If you had expenses related to COVID, that you could submit it. And, it took a couple of days for one person in my office just to submit for 6 properties. But, we've got $600 back on one property, which isn't much, but we got, $3,600 back on a different property. So, money is money, and we'll take it where we can get it. But there are, not only just those programs, like Tomeka said, related to the residents, but also some that your properties can get. Montgomery County has one actively right now for, reimbursement up to $5,000. I'll take any money that I can get if I can get through their paperwork. So I think it's a great idea. Talking through, are there any other, maybe, to the group or to anybody on the panel, any automation of processes that you've seen that have saved you any money? Is there, anything else that you're seeing that's saving?
No, but I have something that could be costing.
Okay.
And I was just thinking, who's been affected by trash? Because not everyone is staying home and ordering out. You might have to increase your trash pickup, which is going to be additional cost, but also, and Larry would love this, it also can increase your rodent count, because now the trash is building up, is overflowing into your community. So now you might see that uptick of complaint for mice and roaches and so forth. Not a plug for Larry, but I know that is a concern right now, and other creepy crawlies, bed bugs and such, because people are having to consolidate homes, and you might have a family member that has moved with you because they've lost their job, and they don't always just bring their luggage. They also sometimes bring other things.
Absolutely. We've seen an uptick in trash. Our budget numbers for 2021 are pretty scary, and not just the pickups, but, we've also really seen, even overflowing dumpsters. Now we're getting contamination charges in our recycling. So we've actually had to put locks on our recycling because the payment for renting the lock or having them make the adjustment is cheaper than the contamination charges for things that are in there. So you're right. That was a really great point, Boris. It's not just where can we save, but where are we spending and how do we get it back to whatever a normal might look like? Waste has been through the roof. So
to piggyback on that, talking about upticks, we had one of our attendees asked, what % increase have you seen with many residents being home in regards to utilities? Can you place a percentage on that?
I mean, I don't know that I can put a percentage on. I know it's been substantial, but I don't know that I could put a percentage associated to it.
Yeah, for us, it's spread out geographically. I mean, some places have, been upwards of 10%. Some have been a little bit less, but it's a hard one because it's over our properties. It varies. It's hard to put a number on it.
I was going to say, in just, completing the 2021 budgets, I'm kind of like Mike, we've seen, upwards 8%, in some areas. It just kind of really depends on some of the appliances, some of the features that are on the properties. But I think, 7-8% has been pretty average.
That, that really kind of rounds out our questions that we had to go over. Are there anybody that has anything that they'd like to contribute and either ask that maybe we can chime in and talk about, or that they want to contribute where they've found some savings that we haven't talked through?
I have some questions.
Please.
One participant asked, how have you responded to tenant or resident requests to lower their rent?
Anybody? Boris?
I'll take. I mean, for us, it really got to depend upon, if it's DC, Arlington, Alexandria, chances are their rents are higher than market right now. If you're out west, then that might not be the case. So I think it's dependent again geographically. For us, we're just trying to basically tread water for the next 90 to 120 days, get back to the spring, hope a vaccine starts kicking in. But it's probably going to be cheaper to lower their rent than it is going to be trying to turn it over and find somebody else who may be paying even less. So again, dependent upon geography, we may absolutely have to take a lower rent from that resident, especially if they've been a good tenant.
I agree. We really haven't lowered anyone's rent, but I can tell you that we've definitely not raised a lot of people's rent. When they're up for renewal, we're really looking and analyzing our lease expiration curves and trying to, look, we'll renew you for another 6 months at the same rate, maybe 8 months, maybe 3 months at the same rate, just to get us out of this hole that we're in right now. And we're not really in a position to raise their rent and lose a resident. That's just not where we are. So again, I think we've really concentrated on communication and just really tried to work within the constraints of where we are and not open the floodgates.
Yeah, we try to go out at zero renewals on the ones we just discussed and closer to the city, and maybe throw a $500 concession or do something, offer free parking, whatever little trick may work that they think they're getting value, and maybe they're not as internet savvy, which is unusual, but you try.
Boris, are you
one of our participants added that they provide lots of resources where the resident should be able to get financial assistance in response to requests for lower rent.
Yeah, we get those and then blast them out through our email blast too to the residents. And some properties take it and whether they owe $5,000 or $500 are taking it and applying for it. In other properties, they just don't take it, which is mind blowing to me. I love the idea though. I think we should be providing as many resources as we can to reclaim the income.
Another question came in, changing directions a little bit. This individual is curious to hear more about capital planning for 2021. They say some of our owners where we had to push projects are hoping to now accomplish 2 years of CapEx projects with smaller budgets. Any advice on how to navigate this?
I mean, I think, we've gone back to our, to our vendor partners and said, we still want to do this work with you. If we give you more, if we do more, can we talk about the rate, and even talked about the season, is there a better time to do it when maybe you're a little slower and we can get, we can still be loyal to the vendors who have been so loyal to us. But really there's only but so much money to go around. So, we've been looking to see what we can negotiate, renegotiate, or retime to see where it might make more sense.
Yeah, we've also asked vendors to hold pricing for some of the capital needs, some capital items. So it's really conversations, have those conversations. If they submitted a proposal to get the work done in 2020 and, of course, for money reasons, you haven't been able to, I would, go back to that vendor and ask them, look, can you hold this for me for 2021? What does this look like for you? Or how long can you hold it for? Even if you can't hold it for the year, can you do it at least through Q1 or Q2?
That's very similar to us. We have vendors we've worked with for a long time, and you want to do right by them, but obviously you got to protect your assets and your investments. So holding rates is, and maybe you scale back the project depending on what it is. We've done that in the past, but I think what Tomeka said is accurate, right on.
And I agree with you, Mike. And also maybe grouping projects and giving to the same vendor, and maybe you can get a cheaper price by, instead of one site, maybe it's 2 or 3 sites to try to get a better price point.
And we've actually gone the other way sometimes. Sometimes maybe we'll do bulk HVAC even more than what we would normally do just to get the better pricing that way. So, sometimes on our end, we may go a little bit further just to because at the end, it might actually be better long-term if you're planning on doing them anyhow.
Very true. Sarah, do we have any more questions or feedback?
I don't see any more questions in the chat at this time.
Okay. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to offer or recommend, have any questions about before we wrap up? We're almost at our time, but we have a couple minutes if anybody has anything.
Or suggestions for topics that they'd like to see the Operations Council cover in the future?
Crickets.
Well,
okay.
Thank you, Jennifer, for moderating our discussion today. Thank you, Tomeka, Boris, and Mike. I think that this was fantastic, and hopefully, if nothing else, people feel comfort in knowing that they're not alone in navigating through these tough waters. So we appreciate you spending your time with us. Speaking of appreciation, PMA's membership committee is hosting an event called Coffee, Conversation, and a Little Appreciation on Wednesday, December 16th at 10 o'clock. We will have our corporate sponsors as well as some special members sharing something that they're grateful for. This is part of an ongoing series that we've been doing this year, where we've had some great attendance and some great moments shared with each other. And we'll have a little token of appreciation for those of you who attend. So you have to attend to see what the token of appreciation is. So that's your incentive to go do that. And then we already have our, moving into the new year, we have our Get Involved meeting on the calendar. We'll hold our virtual Get Involved meeting on Tuesday, January 12th. That'll start at 10 o'clock, and we'll obviously have a whole new format for that. But it's a great way to learn about who PMA is and how you can get involved and make the most out of your membership. So stay tuned for more information on that. Again, as Jennifer mentioned, today's program was sponsored by the Operations Council. That group is always welcoming feedback. We're looking at ways that we can help you and your team operate your properties as efficiently and effectively as possible. And we'll be doing a lot of virtual programming in the beginning of the year. So if you have suggestions about topics that you'd like to see us cover, please feel free to send them my way. My email address is sarah@pma-dc.org. And I think that's all we have. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for moderating. Oh, she's gone.